Our next presentation is Esperanza Fire, 20 years later. And, you know, I know this conference is about entrapments, and I would imagine that everybody remembers where they were on October 26th. I know I do. And, you know, with entrapments, and we've had a number of them, and we'll talk at the end here a lot about the human factors, but because there's a couple of human factors that are consistent on all these. And I say that because on August 30th of 2009, we had an entrapment. And we had an entrapment at Camp 16 with 74 people. And unfortunately, we lost 10 Narnie that day. But the same human factors exist in all of these. It's not the fire, it's us. Chin Chavez began his career in 1977 with CAL FIRE and retired in 2024 after 40 years of state service. He attended Colorado State University, graduated with BS in Forest Management, and worked for the U.S. Forest Service from 1980 to 83. He returned to CAL FIRE and promoted through the ranks to Assistant Chief in 2022. Tim has been on numerous cadres, including Field Observers, SIT Unit Leader, and Fire Behavior Series. He was a CAL FIRE Incident Management, he was on a CAL FIRE Incident Management team from 1999 to 2020. He currently holds fireline qualifications, a Fire Behavior Analyst, Ops Section Chief, Branch Director, Division Suit, and Strike Team Leader. I gave you a little bit of John Hawkins, but I'm giving you more today. John started working, I said, in June 8th of 1964 in Nevada City after graduating from Cal State Humboldt. That's Humboldt Cal Poly now, right? Hawkins immediately knew he was addicted to firefighting. He became a BC in TGU in 1972. Transferred to BTU, where he was a BC and DC for 30 years. And in early 2004, he promoted to Deputy Chief at RRU and then became the Fire Chief. Tim and John.
Good morning, everybody. It's somewhat dubious to be the last program of the last day, right before lunch, yada yada yada. So, but here we go. We're gonna do something a little different because I think most everybody in this room probably has a pretty good idea of what happened that day. Like Chief Quinalty said, you know, it's been 20 years. We have a thing that happens every time we do the staff ride. We learn something different about what happened that day. So the story, like Chief Hawkins always says, the story will always continue to be told, and it will never end. So what we're going to talk about today is some of the things, some of the positive things, some of the negative things, but mostly going to focus on positive things that have happened in the 20 years since October 26, 2006. Just a brief thumbnail sketch for the one or two people that don't know what happened that day. Engine 57 was doing evacuations and structure defense in the lower Twin Pines area up above Banning. It was dark, 2 o'clock in the morning. They had scouted out all the houses in this neighborhood, found a couple that they thought were viable to what we then called winners, and we're standing by for the fire front to come. And when it came at sunrise on the 26th, it came with a vengeance, and it killed the 5 firefighters on Engine 57 almost instantaneously. I honestly don't think they even had a chance to run until they were down and dead. Well, 2 of them lived part of the morning. Mark Lotzenheiser died at the hospital, and Pablo Sarita died a couple of days later. So that's the thumbnail of what happened. You want to add anything?
Yeah,
I'll never forget, you know, the day before, I contacted Chief Chavez and I said, because he was a captain at Station 25 at San Jacinto, he was my go-to guy then, and still is. I called him up and I said, hey, what do you think of the National Weather Service San Diego's prediction of red flag warning for our area, the Riverside unit? He says, hey, Chief, he says, they're predicting a moderate blow. I think it's going to be a strong blow. And he said, we better hope we don't have a fire in the San Gorgonio Pass. And then the rest is history. We did have the fire. And it was almost like clairvoyance when that happened, the prediction. And then I remember a little bit more about when the fire started at 1 a.m. in the morning, or 1:11 a.m. Deputy Chief Dale Hutchison, later retired as CAL FIRE Region Chief, Southern Region Chief, Dale Hutchison, he called me about 3 a.m. My wife always told me, as a fire chief, dumb shit, she said, you're gonna, whenever you get a call after 9 o'clock at night, it's gonna be bad. And it always was bad. It always was somebody died or were multiple civilian fatalities at a traffic collision or at a structure fire or something like that. Well, it wasn't bad. Dale told me, we've got a fire in the San Antonio Pass. So I'm gonna tell you right now, if you want to stay on Chief Chavez's good side, call it the San Gorgonio Pass, not the Banning Pass, because he'll kick your ass.
Thank you, Chief.
So I get the phone call, Chief, it's Chief Hutchison, duty chief. We got a fire in the San Gorgonio Pass and their cattle's on it. It's running. It's at least 500 acres now. This is about 3 a.m. It's about 500 acres and it's running. I've already ordered a team. He says, I hope you agree. Absolutely, I agree, Dale, because I trusted everything he did. Because I knew as a fire chief, there were certain people that you could turn your back on, and they'd absolutely make the right decision at the right time. Now, Dale Hutchison. And so, I'll kick it back to you.
So that's basically all we're going to say about the incident that day. If you have any questions at the end, I guess we can get more specific, but we'll see how this goes. So first of all, we want to talk about the family. If anybody, well, let me do this first. How many people, first of all, is there anybody in the room that was on any of the 5 district vigils that night? You never know. Sometimes they're here. So the family impacts, let's talk about that for a minute. Britt Rosso, who was the superintendent of Arrowhead for many years, and then his final assignment was the Lessons Learned Center in Tucson, used to give a talk where he talked about the bullseye. And the bullseye, center of the bullseye is the people that were on the scene, immediately adjacent to or immediately impacted by the fatality incident or the near-miss incident, however you want to say it. And then outward from the bullseye is the concentric rings. And think about that as people that are affected as you go outward. So the next ring is all the other San Jac District employees. And then the next ring is, maybe all the San Bernardino Forest employees. And then the next ring is all firefighters in Southern California, and then outward, to the general firefighters across the nation. And then the last ring is like everybody in the nation. So the closer you are to the bullseye, the more impacts on your life, right? It makes sense. And the more you've probably learned from the incident. That was his angle. So all the 5 families, of course, were terribly impacted that day. One of the things we talk about pretty extensively in the staff ride is notifications. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, the notifications were handled by the U.S. Forest Service, San Bernardino National Forest, and they were headed up. John Miller, you're here. Where are you? Right here. You might know who that was. Dietrich, or who did the notifications?
Kind of. Well, because at the time the Forest Service Honor Guard was based on the San Bernardino, and so several people from the Honor Guard kind of took that role on.
The worst thing as a fire chief, retired fire chief, the 2 worst things I had to do that I would not hope anyone else ever had to do or I don't want to ever do again. Number one was line of duty death notifications. I know Chief Tripp, you either notified Arnie or Ted's family, while Chief Freeman made the other notification. The hardest thing was line of duty death notification, but I did several. And the other thing for me was difficult was presenting the flag at a memorial. Realizing that the memorial was for family healing. It wasn't for me. It wasn't about me being a selfish pastor. It was about the family and the family's healing. But it was always difficult to bend over. I would never just bend over. I got down on both of my fat ass knees and I begged for forgiveness in a short conversation as much as I could with the next of kin or whoever the flag is going to. But the notification's tough deal. Not easy.
Yeah, the notifications, went about as well as you could expect, with one exception. One of the engineers, they went to notify his family and they found out that they had moved. So they had a wrong address. So one of the lessons learned and one of the things that I think has improved since then is, in CAL FIRE, we call it the CDF 31, right? Where you fill out your next of kin and it's supposed to be on file somewhere. It used to be a paper document. Now it's electronic. You get it as a notification every year in your email, and they harass you endlessly until you fill it out. It's important that the information that's on file on that piece of paper be accurate and precise exactly for that notification purpose. When 5 Alpha Sierra crashed and killed Josh Bischoff and Tim Rodriguez, there was one of the notifications went okay, the other one, the wife of Tim Rodriguez, went to the airbase before our notification team could get there, and it didn't go well.
Same thing with Christopher McDonald with the crash of our engine 35, got hit by a pickup truck on July the 5th of 2013. And Chris was an engineer. He was not fully suited up. He was getting out, had another response. He was getting out of the cab of the engine, and a pickup truck hit him, threw him up over the mirror, and he died. Same thing. And we had a hard time getting a hold of his wife because the notification was not current. Please, if you take away, some things from this, make sure personally your notification is current and whoever works for you is current.
So, that was just the beginning of the impact on the families, and, even the most loving, functional family is going to have devastating impacts from this kind of a situation. So, all those families, I was just talking to John, all those families are going to be able to get together for the 20th anniversary this year. So they've, worked their way through it somehow. One interesting aspect of the family impacts is that the second generation of U.S. Forest Service firefighters, no less than 3 of Mark Lautzenheiser's children are currently firefighters for the U.S. Forest Service. And his daughter is married to a firefighter from the U.S. Forest Service. So, did you want to say anything about that, John?
It's unbelievable.
It is, kind of. But, so obviously they've worked their way through it and they've dealt with it and they're okay with it. And their kids are fighting fire today. So let's move on. Agency impacts. One of the big results of the Esperanza fire, and I think it's a direct result, I was on the task force that wrote the book, was the WUI policy. Not only the CAL FIRE WUI policy, but the fire scope WUI policy is a direct result of all the stuff that happened on Esperanza. All the terminology changes, going from structure protection to structure defense, fire front following, and all those terminologies that are now commonplace in the fire service. I hope all of that pretty much, it wasn't 100% from Esperanza, but it was a direct result.
Absolutely, and we were just into CAL FIRE, CDF. We were just into bump and run firefighting. That's what we talked about, bump and run. You remember that? And then we've now gone to the different tactical actions, just as Chief Chavez said.
And also the temporary refuge area, or the current, I know that term got bandied worried about a little bit. Temporary refuge area, all of that kind of stuff all came from Esperanza. Another interesting aspect was the Esperanza fire on day 2 was one of the first times we used the NASA MQ-9 Predator for intelligence gathering. It had a high resolution, very next generation sensor on board, and we got some of the best imagery of that active fire on day 2 that I had ever seen. I was a situation unit leader on the fire. On day 2, I was part of the team that came in and took the fire. I was also on the initial attack, so I hadn't slept in a couple of days, but the imagery was amazing and really helped the operations guys to formulate their plan and have that fire approach containment.
Want me to talk a little bit about the investigation, the
yeah.
the judgment, the sentencing? Raymond Lee Euler. Raymond Lee Euler, the asshole.
Right. Piece of shit.
Murderer. And so Raymond Lee Euler probably set 60 bucks, probably, maybe 65. In fact, we had a fire a week before the Esperanza fire in Myers Canyon and Banning Water Canyon. We had a fire that burned, I don't know, up to 60, 70, 80 acres or something like that. We had an active investigation. And so our investigators were working on cause and origin, and they finally got to the point where they were focused on Euler. And so Euler set the fire on Esperanza Avenue, consequently Esperanza fire. He set the fire with a cigarette matchbook device. The fire took off, it ran. The investigators picked up on it. He was arrested. We had a great assistant district attorney then, Mike Estrin, and he prosecuted Raymond Lee Euler, and they nailed Euler 5 counts of murder. The first time in history that a arsonist on a wildland fire was convicted of murder. 5 counts of murder, 20 counts of arson, 17 counts of possession of an incendiary device. Raymond Lee Euler went to trial in March, was convicted in April of 2009. Raymond Lee Euler, when he went to the initial judgment, when he was judged as guilty, he was in his orange inmate denims. His arms were covered. In April of 2009, when he was sentenced, he was there and his arms were visible. On his arms, this is going to make you sick, but on his arms were tattoos of flames. Raymond Lee Euler. Raymond Lee Euler is now in Chino. He's on death row for the murders.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, the trial was excruciating for the family. Some of them insisted on being there through the whole thing. Of course, they had to look at all the forensic photos and all that, and it was horrible. A couple of the family liaisons that were there with the families are still having a hard time dealing with that sequence of events.
I'll lay it out before what I heard when I was in court on the day that Euler was sentenced. I spoke against him, of course. And as I was sitting there, his family, understandably I guess, his family is calling all of us that were going to speak son of a bitches and no good bastards, and the people who are, ought to be on death row are those people there in uniform or whatever.
All right, so moving on, so one of the positive things that I've been personally involved with since the very beginning was the Esperanza staff ride. Anybody in the room been on the staff ride? A couple of you have. I highly recommend it. The flyer should be coming out anytime. It's always the middle week of March, and we do 2 sessions with about 30 to 40 students per session. It's gut-wrenching, it's life-changing, and it's an incredible education experience. The real staff ride is a pre-study phase where you get the book. By the way, if you haven't read the book, John M. McQueen, it's one of the few documents that the San Jacinto District captains agree is pretty close.
And as we read in the book, I'm the anonymous contributor. So when you read the book, you might as well know I'm the anonymous contributor, because I disagreed with the CAL FIRE attorney, and I was told you can't speak. I did speak anonymously.
I'm quoted a couple of times too, so, but that's another story. So yeah, the staff ride, an amazing tribute to our 5 boys that lost their life that night, and positive outcomes. I stay involved with it to this day, even though it's kind of a grind. It's, like I said, it's emotional every time we do it, but I've seen the impacts to the students, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And I like to think that we've saved some lives by that process.
And I would add on that the main facilitators of the staff ride accommodated Los Angeles County Fire Department for 3 trips to the Esperanza fire, where we had 85 to 95 of our chief officers and captains attend a modified staff ride to be able to see what happened. And a real credit goes out. Tim, you were there. Vogel was there. Norm Walker was there. Dan Felix was there. Did I miss anything?
I can't remember if Gerhardt was there or not. He
I
kind of comes
don't
and
remember
goes.
Gerhard being.
He was not. So that's another thing about the staff ride is right now, if you get on the roster and go through it right now, we still have 4 out of the 5 district captains that are eyewitnesses and present the scenario as it happened, as they remember it. It's unbelievable to get the level of detail that those guys remember. But an interesting thing is that not, like Chief Quinalty said, not all of them remember the same thing at the same time as far as like radio traffic and where they were and what time stuff happened. And I mean, we have the sequence down, but there's still, like I said, every year we learn something new, either from one of the students or one of the captains will go, oh yeah, I remember that now. We did this, that, and the other thing, and we'll all go, what? Yeah, so that happens pretty much every time. By the way, yeah, the pre-study phase, it's a pretty extensive amount of reading you have to do. The field phase, which is where we go out and we do the 5 stands, thank you. The 5 stands where stand 0 is in the hotel, we go through a bunch of stuff, and then stand 1 is Cabazon Fire Station, stand 2 is 243 and Twin Pines Road, stand 3 is One View and Twin Pines Road, stand 4 is what we call the Blue Mobile, which is no longer blue and no longer a mobile. Somebody has built a manufactured home there. The place actually looks pretty nice. It's for sale if anybody's interested. And then stand 5, of course, is the Octagon House. So again, and then the last phase is the integration phase, which I think is probably the most productive, the most educational, and probably the most impactful, where everybody gets to stand up over dinner. We do it over dinner. We have a few adult beverages, and everybody gets to stand up and say what they learned that day. And it's pretty amazing. Okay, so we'll move on to another thing that, and I can honestly say that I think Chris Fogel and Crystal Johnson kind of single-handedly, double-handedly, however you want to look at it, changed the culture of the fire service big picture and of the Forest Service specifically with several of their initiatives that they made out of thin air. Just the labor of those 2 people was amazing. One of them is a course called You Will Not Stand Alone, which covers all kinds of stuff. I haven't been through it myself, but it covers all kinds of stuff about the stuff we've been talking about with the impacts with the families, with notifications, with the process of what's going to happen, the family liaison, what the duties are, what do you do, what not to do, all these processes, it's an amazing culture change for the fire service. We don't necessarily have that, but a lot of stuff has happened in CAL FIRE in a similar vein where our employee support services went from one guy in Sacramento headquarters to now I think the staff is like 13 or 14 people. Sworn officers, that's their 100% job is employee support services, which is everything from substance abuse to trauma to
Your head's out of line.
mental health, all that stuff. That's their job, 24/7, 365. You can call a number and they'll take care of you. So that kind of recognition that mental health and wellness and trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress, something else now, syndrome, anyway, all that stuff. You know, when I was a young firefighter, and I'm sure Chief Hawkins even more, you just gotta suck it up. We just went to this terrible call, babies died, bodies were scattered all over the place. You just gotta suck it up, because the next call is coming, and it's not that way anymore.
I'm going to lighten it a little bit here. A year after Esperanza, there was a really nice get-together for anyone who wanted to attend at the, what's the name of the down in Poppet Flats, the Silent Valley Recreation
RV Club.
Yeah, RV Club. So it's a really nice get-together. Well, at that thing, there was, at the time of the, are we up?
No, we're good.
At the time of this get-together, CAL FIRE was involved with a disagreement with a lawsuit about the chaplain program and how it eventually got settled the way it should have been settled. But there was
That was me.
So I was a unit chief, Riverside County Fire Chief at the time, and so I get a call that we're going to have one of our chaplains be there. So I get a call from the region chief, John. No religion. No religion, John. No religion. You understand? Whoever speaks, well, the person who spoke was a good old boy. And he was from the south. And right off the bat, he throws up his arms and he yells, "Hallelujah!" And I thought, oh my gosh, my badge just dimmed out right now. And so we went on some more, and several more hallelujahs. So I thought, when it was over, you know, I'd rather tell my boss than be told up. So I told my boss, and she laughed, and she said, "Won't make a difference." That was the end of it.
Yeah, that's a whole other story, maybe next year. So along with a kind of parallel to the You Will Not Stand Alone course, Crystal and Chris Fogel kind of single-handedly changed the way we do investigations across the Wildland Fire Service. Whereas, if you read the Esperanza Fire official report, and like has been said several times this last couple of days, you know, people doing their best to get the word out the right way, and most of the time does not go well. Most of the time, people find fault with the official reports on. I don't care what accident you want to talk about. The official report was probably pretty close to being junk, right? Pretty universal, but it's kind of the nature of the beast. So instead of, and one of the problems with the official reports is at the end, what do? They go through the 10 standard firefighting orders and the 18 situations, and they kind of blame the victim. And that's one of the big problems with it. Not only just in tone, but we all know it's an oversimplification. Way oversimplification to do that. Not that there weren't mistakes made on any fire you can think of, but it's way oversimplified. For a lot of the reasons that Guy and the Chief Quinalty and all those guys talked about this week, where it's way more complicated than you can capture in a 100-page report, right? So, Forest Service, along with most of the other wildland fire agencies, came up with what they call facilitated learning analysis, which sounds kind of milquetoasty, right? And Chief Cook probably wouldn't like that, based on what he said yesterday. But it made it more, importantly, more of a learning tool. The focus was on learning rather than what? Blame, right? Focus is on learning. So, huge culture change. I just can't say enough about it.
I can add a huge cultural change. Most of the people who are involved in this who do get blamed, they did not do this purposefully. There was not a purposeful act. It was an act of at the time, their best judgment, which we could easily second guess the day after and after and after. By the way, Mike Dietrich, the retired San Bernardino National Forest Fire Chief, he's the one that told me, and it wasn't my original idea, that the Esperanza fire is like a book, that a new chapter is being written all the time.
Oh, that was Dietrich that said
That was Dietrich.
I thought it was you.
No,
I thought that was a Hawkinsism.
No,
All this time. See, I learned something new. See, where was I?
we're talking about fault and how the reports find fault.
Forest find fault, yeah, and it's absolutely. I mean, that might be useful in one of the things that comes out of the staff ride, and Norm Walker and all the captains and Dan Felix, when the fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh thought in their head that morning after they realized what happened was, oh shit, we're going to be investigated.
And Richard Cantwell bill.
Richard Gearhart even says, once they, got everybody in the helicopter and found all the other of their dead friends, he says out loud that I'm gonna lose my career because of this fire. If you remember at the time, the Cantwell bill, right? How many know what the Cantwell bill is? Anybody remember? Only a couple people. So the 30-mile fire in eastern Washington, there was 4 fatalities on that fire. Look it up. It's a good one to study for a lot of human factors reasons. But as a result of that, the U.S. Senator from, I believe it was the U.S. Senator from Washington, passed a bill in the Congress that required the Forest Service, anytime there was a fatality in the U.S. Forest Service, it had to be investigated by the Office of the Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. What do you think the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Office of the Inspector General, what do they deal with mostly? Rotten meat, spoiled grain, right? Maybe timber theft. Yeah, so now they are going to be the be-all and end-all of wildland fire investigation. So the guys were terrified. And the other investigation that they knew they were going to be subjected to was OSHA. And it turns out in the end, the Office of the Inspector General investigation wasn't that bad. The inspectors or the investigators were decent. They asked good questions. The report that came out was pretty non-judgmental. The worst was OSHA, Fed OSHA. Norm Walker tells a story that at the very end of his, it wasn't Cal OSHA, it was Fed OSHA. At the very end of his interview, the investigators from OSHA asked Norm, what are you going to do personally to prevent this from ever happening again? And Norm gets up, throws his papers down and says, that's for you guys to figure out, and walked out of the room. If you, all the documents are on the Lessons Learned Center, but if you read the OSHA report, it is unbelievably unrealistic. One of their recommendations was There should never be unburned fuel between firefighters and the fire. Well, Norm's question was, well, how are we supposed to get to the fire? So, yeah, that was, but, so to change all of that milieu that we ended up in, the thing now is called the Coordinated Response Protocol, right? Which is more focused on trauma that the people have experienced, taking care of the people. Even though everybody knows some kind of a facilitated learning analysis or something has to be done, but taking care of the people as the top priority. So that's part of that coordinated response protocol. You have anything to add?
Yeah, just add to you, the morning, I remember at 7:57 when the word came in from Chris Vogel to FICC, the San Bernardino Force Dispatch, and Vogel said we've got to burn over, we need 2 medic helicopters, two victims, 90% plus burn injuries. And I remember I was standing at our old Station 24 in Cabazon, and out on the lawn was Norm Walker and Dan Felix and Mike Dietrich. And the minute that the word came off, Dan Felix fell to both knees like this. I'll never forget that. And then later, Norm says, I've got to go up to the scene. Norm goes up to the scene, and about 30 minutes after he left, I decided I need to go see up there. I go up there, and I drive him down to Colonial View Drive. I meet Norm coming out in his Suburban. And I think, what the hell do you say to somebody who just lost 5? Or we didn't know, 3 at the time. We knew 3 at that moment. And 2 badly burned. So I got out of my rig, I put my arms around Norm as he opened the windows of his Bourbon, and I said, Norm, we got to stand together, we got to stand tall on this. And he said, Norm, he said, John, I'm done. I'm broken. So then I went down and checked on our people, then I drove up to Vista Grande, where Norm had stood down the 4 remaining engine companies and the crew, Vista Grande crew. And I went into Vista Grande, and it was like a zombie zone. And that's not a criticism, that's an observation. There were pockets of people standing around trying to figure out what's going on, what had going. And you never forget these things. These things in your mind, you can picture the Vista Grande station.
Yeah, Norm tells that story of meeting Chief Hawkins on Colonial View Road, and it's a very impactful part of the staff, right? I'll say that. So another big change that happened was our, in CAL FIRE specifically, and I think for the federal WOW and fire agencies as well, was our funeral policy. Our funeral policy was very sparse. After this incident, we realized, oh man, what happens if we have one of these? So our funeral policy was basically thrown in the trash can and we started over. And now we have very specific, you know, if this kind of funeral, the family, you know, they get what they want, but these are the guidelines. This kind of, you know, line of duty, not line of duty, retiree, that's all spelled out in our policy. So it takes a lot of the guesswork for the managers, and believe me, the workloads that those guys went through, Norm Walker and all of the people in the San Bernardino went through. Imagine planning 5 funerals, 5 memorial services, and a memorial at Glen Helen Stadium that held 10,000 people. Imagine the complexity. They brought in a Type 1 team just to deal with all that stuff. And that was another learned lesson, was kind of an impactful thing like that. Bring in a team that will handle all of those kind of details, because the people that are in the center of the bullseye are not going to be able to.
100 engine companies lined up.
If you weren't there, it was amazing. It was amazing. I'll never forget it. So another positive thing that came out was the Engine 57 softball tournament. It sounds kind of, is that really? It's a thing, and it's a big thing. It occurs in Beaumont every spring. There's participation from all the wildland fire agencies. They do a big flag ceremony with bagpipes and honor guard, and it's hundreds of softball players, kids. You know, they're kids. I don't know whether it's under 12 or under 14. Anybody know? I don't remember. Anyway, it's an amazing event. It's totally focused on the memory of our 5 boys on Engine 57, and it's amazing. So it's a very positive thing.
Talking to the pilots who flew Lotsie and Pablo Cerda out, we're actually talking to Richard Gerhardt and Chris Bogle. When they got into the scene, they were really the RIC team to get there. And they found as they walked up the 15,400 driveway, Gorgonio View driveway, they found the first person on the ground, and that was Pablo Cerda. And he was on the ground, and they walked by him, they thought he was dead, he was so badly burned. And then Pablo was able to raise his arm and say, "Help me." So then they went up the hill another maybe 60 or 100 feet, it's not too far. And that's where they met Mark Watson-Heiser. And Mark was so badly burned that he couldn't talk. And what was eerie later when I went to the scene was the King bricks, the portable radios, were still talking. They hadn't been moved. They were still standing upright. And it was all this discarded medical stuff.
Yeah, another real impactful part of the staff ride, really emotional for me, was listening to the description of the helicopters. 60-knot wind, a Type 3 lands. They lift out in our 2 Type 2 Hueys, UH-1Hs. Each one comes in a heli spot that is no bigger than the porch out in front of this building. They landed 2 helicopters in a 60-knot wind, and each one of them took a patient to the burn center. It is unbelievable.
301 took Pablo.
And if you know the pilots, George Karcher and
Dave
Patrick.
Patrick was on 301.
Dave Patrick is the classic example of there's old pilots and there's bold pilots, but there's no old, bold pilots. Dave Patrick was one of the most cautious guys. If anybody ever flew with him, very cautious. To think of Dave Patrick, for me, knowing Dave, thinking about him landing a helicopter in a 60-knot wind and a postage stamp, it's unbelievable. They had a dinner the next year, I think, where they invited the 3 pilots. I don't remember the pilot of 535, but they invited the 3 pilots and they had a dinner, and the families were incredibly welcoming and thankful. And, it's a really impactful part of the staff ride. Okay, one last thing, or we're getting close to the end, and this is a pretty dorky, geeky thing, which you expect from me, right? Our ROS network in the San Antonio Pass improved tremendously thanks to our BLM friends. They put up a ROS station at Poppet Flats. They put up a ROS station at Highland Springs, which, by the way, very often has some of the hardest wind speeds anywhere in Riverside County. They put up a ROS station in Cabazon. I want to say there was a 4th one, but I don't remember where. Oh, Whitewater maybe? Anyway, our network at that time was the Beaumont ROS, which was out back of the fire station, which at that time had a 3-story apartment building right next to it. It was a terrible ROS network, and it was a one-station ROS network for the entire pass, and that ROS station failed at 7 o'clock in the morning on October 26th. It said error code. Everybody thinks, oh, it was a 99-mile-an-hour wind. No, it was not a 99-mile-an-hour wind. That's an error code. So it either spun the anemometer so hard that it broke it, or something else happened with the signal. Maybe it was a ghost transmission signal, I'm not sure, but it did fail that morning. So our network there is vastly better. We can track the Santa Ana's surfacing and decreasing much easier, much better data. We have scads and scads of hourly weather data now that we can analyze for decades to come. And it was all thanks to the Riverside Fire Lab, which is now defunct, but At the time, the scientists there, they wanted to learn more about the Santa Anas and the San Antonio Pass, and that was the way that they got some money, they put up the stations, and we're benefiting it to this day. Anything to add?
No, I'm good. At some point when we finish, John Miller would like to talk about a get-together that might occur this month.
Sure, now's a good time.
You don't know me.
Yes, we do.
Back in '06, I was the initial attack PIO for the burnover, you know, the incident with incident. And I was also on the honor guard, which was kind of a weird dual role, and it really played into what happened. Everybody here has had family members die, and no two families that are alike, right? So now we have 5 people that died, and it was really 6 families. No two families are alike. And that, over the years, has presented lots of challenges. So now that we've hit the 20th year, I was talking to John earlier in the year and said, you know, I'm going to start kind of stirring the pot as to what we're going to do. Because I just assumed that there'd be a lot of people with the circles wanting to get involved. And so we reached out to the families, and fortunately we recently had a little victory that they have agreed to have a public event. And it's still in the very early stages. It'll be on Saturday the 24th. Everybody here is invited. It'll be at the Twin Pines Ranch, which is all the way down Twin Pines Road, past Winterview. Still working out a lot of the details, still trying to figure out how we're going to pay for it. The one thing that the families are kind of adamant at this point is that we're not going to advertise anything on social media, which might hamper how it's going to go. We will reach out to all the departments once we figure out if there's going to be room for apparatus and how much. And we're still kind of struggling with the families on that piece of the puzzle. And like I said, we got to figure out how to pay for it. And one of the things that I have to do is I have to go back and dig through all my Esperanza files and try to remember who was intimately involved, that's, you know, retired, moved away, what have you, so we can kind of put them on an invitation list.
I have a document with all the crew members that were on the 5 district engines. I'll send it to you.
Because, you know, there's a lot of people, like my good friend True Smith over there. You will be there. And the only other thing I want to say is about the whole Esperanza thing is I want to thank the San Bernardino County Fire Department. Because right after it happened, and we're at Station 24 trying to figure out what the hell we're going to do, there's Pat Bennett. Pat's like, hey, anything you guys need. Here we're in Riverside County, and there's Pat, whatever you want. We'll cover all the stations, we'll do this, we'll do that. And I'll never forget that. And then at 6 p.m. on Halloween, firefighter Serta passed at Arrowhead Regional Hospital. And so we quickly mobilized a press conference and got a couple agents, and we had to figure out how to get him from Arrowhead down to Paris, to the coroner's office. And my good friend Peter Briarty with the county fire department said, John, don't worry about it. I will get all that lined up. And Peter was able to get everything lined up so we could have a nice quiet procession that evening. And yeah, so just a shout out, take that back to your department. That's all I got.
Tentative date again?
24th, Saturday the 24th, probably around 10 or 11 in the morning of October.
One last thing, since John brought it up, social media. We talk a lot amongst ourselves, the people that wrote the staff ride, about how different that incident would be today in today's social media environment. How hard would it have been to get to the families before social media has the word out? It's an incredible challenge to all of us to make a notification before they see it on their Instagram feed. I don't predict that it's going to go well the next time it happens, and you know it's going to happen. We just hope it's not going to be us. Chief, I don't have anything else. Any closing remarks?
I'm good.
Okay, any questions? Don?
I got two questions. The first one's right on that topic. I know for me personally, I was sitting at home at 7 a.m. watching Channel 5, Stan Chambers. And he was standing at the bottom of 243, right where it leaves the bottom of the valley, it starts up the hill. And he was doing a live presentation. And he made a comment that he was aware there was firefighters trapped and something was going on because of all the rigs that went piling past the Trope 3. I'm just curious, did that somehow get to the families before the notification teams, or were they already suspecting anything before? Then I have one other quick question.
I don't have any personal
I can
knowledge.
only guess, Don, and I can only guess a couple of things. The Station 57 was not covered that night. So the people came from their homes. So I have to believe point number one is their families knew they were going to a fire. And maybe they knew they were going to Cabazon. I don't know beyond that. So I don't know any of the other. I don't recall that. I obviously wasn't listening to the news then, so I can't answer.
John, do you have any insight on that?
Unfortunately, we did have an employee disclose to KCAL Channel 9 that 57 had burned over. And we talk about the vacant house out in Apple Valley, Hesperia. And that was a McKay family that we went and pounded on the door of a vacant house. And Jason McKay's grandma, all the way through the trial, kept reminding me that that's how she found out about her grandson passing, was on Channel 9.
I don't know.
My last question is, we've been talking a lot about human behavior, and I think it's fairly well known that there was a personal connection between 57's crew and the homeowner. And I'm just curious, has there been any looking into decisions possibly made because of that human factor, that human connection, or not?
So this is one of the rumors that ran rampant in the first year or so after the fire, was that the reason Mark and his crew decided to stay there was because they knew Greg Kohler's brother was a battalion chief on the Cleveland, I believe, and they thought maybe that was the reason that they chose that house. That turned out to be false. They did not know that there was a relationship there. One thing I will say is Greg Kohler, the property owner, think about owning a piece of property where 5 people died. What do? He doesn't live there. He kind of is a tinkerer. He made his career was moving houses. So one of the complications of the fire was there was his house moving trolleys all over the property, and they have these big rubber tires on them, and they were all on fire. And so I don't think it contributed to anything other than just being difficult to get into the scene. It took a while to get in there because of the heat being generated from all those burning buildings and all those burning trolleys. But Greg Kohler is a saint. He still, like I said, tinkers around his property at 15400 Gregorio View, and anybody that comes up to the property, he's built, if you haven't been there, he's built a memorial with his own money and his own effort to the 5 boys. It is beautiful, has double flagpole, has a giant rock. He had an engraved granite plaque put on it. It's really touching. And he did that all with his own money. He didn't ask for any help from anybody. And if you show up there with a strike team of engines in the middle of summer, as people often do whenever there's fire in the pass, every strike team from San Benito, Monterey, Shasta, Mendocino, Humboldt, San Diego, whenever there's a fire, they, on their 24 off, usually manage to traipse up there and unload everybody and walk around, and Greg is perfectly okay with it. Yeah, he's a saint, for sure. Any other questions?
I got,
Yes.
so three actually, so the first one, I went on that staff ride, it was the most confusing staff ride I've ever been on. And we'll do that one-on-one. The other thing is the TRA is an excellent concept, y'all need to look into that. Follow the bill. So the one is, can you talk about the rebuttal that for the survivors?
Or the captain's road, yes.
Yeah, that's a good point, Fred. So if you dig into the documents on the lesson website, you'll see the official investigation, the OSHA investigation, OIG investigation, the captain's rebuttal document, which is a 2-page document which they go through the official report page by page. And one of their big complaints is that some of the 5 captains were never interviewed. So they never got a chance to tell their side of the story to the investigation team. And I don't know why or how that happened. All I know is that's what they tell me. They never got interviewed by the it was an interagency investigation team.
I never got interviewed either as a fire chief. And I'll tell you what I know, what I could have contributed. The one miss that I made in putting notifications out to everybody, because I was pretty faithful every day about putting the weather out. I missed put the weather out for a red flag warning for October 26, 2006. Only time, I don't know who missed it, but I to this day tell you right here up front, I made a mistake. I knew better from the South Canyon fire and how the red flag warnings went out there. Nobody paid attention to them. I missed that day.
Yeah, and there's another document on there that Steve Seltzner also wrote a rebuttal. I don't know. It is what it is. You have to read them for yourself. They're definitely worth reading. Anything else? Josh?
So I just want to say, thank you for presenting today. And this forum, I've been coming off and on since 2008, and I got to meet Boss Lee, last survivor, Ben Gulch, and hear his story. And for everybody that's their first time here, this is better than any blue sheet or green sheet you're ever going to get in the real world. And Dave Fowler and I we went to the Silver Fire, which was in basically the footprint, kind of sort of, Esperanza. I had a division that had the Octagon House, and it was just so, humbling to be there and see all the, see the house you said the monument and everything. But coming to these things over the years that I've been here, and this year especially hearing Calabasas and Pioneer Town and Esperanza all at once, it's just fun. I just want to pass off to you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, partner.
I am very proud of this little organization. We have heard, those of us that have been coming for years and years, have heard some amazing things in this room that you won't get anywhere else. So, yeah, thanks, Josh. Appreciate that.
One quick thing, Tim, about the blue sheets and green sheets. I've been on a SART team numerous times, and you have. And we've always been usually told by our team leaders that we need to kind of,
Tone it down.
I can't tell you how many times I've had to change my report. Yep. And once in a while, I get reported by our chief to change the report on some other issue. And I just wanted to say, both of you guys touched on it, you're right. You don't get even close to the story.
Like 5 best witnesses are dead. I don't know if we said that yet. 5 best witnesses are dead. There's nobody that was close in there that knows really what goes on. I could surmise, in my mind, that they died from superheated air that came up that unnamed drainage and seared their lung tissues, and they died pretty quickly thereafter. That's what I believe. We don't know. We do know that Lotzie and the two rookies, Pablo Cerda and Danny Hoover Nahara, were up at the house, whereas Jason McKay and Jess McLean were down at the engine. I believe also that Lotzie, being a company officer, attempted to guide the two rookie firefighters because they went basically the same route down past the pool, over the bank. Danny Hoover Nahara dropped in the brush field, and Pablo got to the driveway. And then Lotzie's over right behind him. I really believe he was trying to take them as the mother hen, so to speak.
Yeah, even the surviving district captains, they don't agree on what happened. So, but nobody knows. It's all speculation from all of us that are still here. Anything else?
Yeah, I got one
No,
more
of
thing.
course
So, kind of what we're talking about of not doing a complete investigation, I just got off of the Spanish French staff. Scott Cox was at Sherman Oaks for 202 days after the incident. There was a lot of stuff that he saw. He was your number one witness up there. The investigation team never went to investigate the interview.
I never got investigated.
Mike Cole did, or Killian did, but nobody else ever went to ask him what happened up there.
That's amazing.
He was a rookie firefighter, you know, he didn't know anything.
I don't think they wanted to know what
It's
happened.
kind of like what Jesse said about Crystal, you know, the same thing.
Like Chief Tomlinson said yesterday, good people trying to do the right thing and failing miserably. That's just, if you're ever on one of those SAR teams, I hope you never are, but it's a miserable experience. It's awful, it's heart-wrenching, and it sucks. So, all right, well, this was unconventional, but I think it's a good way to memorial our friends on Engine 57, and may they all rest in peace. Thank you.